Hello and welcome to the vlog. At the end of the last vlog I'd arrived at Kilby, which is south of Leicester. The time has now come to move on north through Leicester itself, and this is where things get a bit interesting because the canal sort of intertwines with the River Soar, and this will be the first time I've been on a river. It'll be wider than the canal, there'll be a current, there'll be weirs, there'll be dragons, all sorts of interesting things. It's quite heavily locked, quite a few locks to go through, so the main target for today is about 5 hours cruising or thereabouts to get to some hopefully secure canal and river truss moorings in the middle of Leicester at a place called Friars Mill. You may notice I'm wearing my Christmas jumper. That is because, although it is not Christmas, it's a very warm jumper, and though the sun is sort of out, it's actually quite nippy today, especially when the wind is blowing. The forecast is sort of okay for the first couple of hours, and then it's going to be solid black cloud overhead. Hopefully no rain, but obviously we'll have to see what comes. Right, fire up the Quattro after first checking the oil and water and all that, and I'm off. But wait, who's that on the boat ahead? Why, it's Alan and Wendy and their dogs Max and Monty, all of whom you may recall from vlog 69, the one about the hybrid narrowboat. They've ever so kindly volunteered to join me all the way to the top of the Soar, as they moor in this patch and know it well. So we're going in convoy, with Alan leading the way and Wendy giving the hyperactive Springer Spaniels some good exercise on the towpath. Like all good convoys, we've got walkie-talkies, which Alan thought to bring along, so a big 10-4 to him, good buddy, and all that. Lovely day, but there is that chill in the air. I'm just happy it's not raining though. Straight round the corner from Kilby is a lock, and Wendy being on the ground, she gets the arduous filling and opening duty, but rest assured, both of us blokes did spring forward each time we'd secured the boats so as to provide assistance, though this was nearly always refused. A thumbs up to check we're ready, and the paddles are opened and the boats waft down. It really helps going in twos in wide locks, otherwise your solo boat can get washed around a bit. This pair are just delighted to be running about and sometimes rolling around on the grass. Water levels were distinctly down on some of the pounds here, very shallow indeed, so careful going. A cup of freshly made coffee from Alan was very welcome. Indeed, both Alan and Wendy fed and watered me at regular intervals. All I could offer them back was a packet of crisps. Onwards, and there's a hint of urbanisation on the horizon. This is South Wigston at the bottom of Leicester. As we press on, it's even more apparent we're creeping into a built-up town, homes lining the canal bank of all sizes. Unfortunately, this also means the scourge of the canals, litter, including this traffic cone, the first of 3 I spotted going through Leicester. I lost count of how many plastic bottles and drinks cans there were floating past. Those who live next to it seem to love the canal though, with many gardens stretching down to the water and embracing it with all manner of interesting ornamentation. I don't know if you can hear the engine here, but it is revving like crazy and yet making very little progress. That's because the water level in this particular bit is really down, so the engine's thrashing away without much water to actually push the boat forward. But we'll get there, hopefully. This swan practically attacked Alan's boat as he came past, defending his mate and his nest, I think, though he largely ignored me. More interesting gardens and decking areas went by. The lengths some people go to are quite extraordinary. This must be glorious on a sunny day. The other annoying thing you get in towns and cities, of course, is that wretched blight of graffiti. Every wall, bridge and bare surface apparently a canvas for the mindless hooligans. There are some who say derelict urban industrial areas of the canal have a unique charm. I can't say I see it myself. This was a nice surprise. Volunteer lockkeepers on the way into town. Now, whether it was because Her Majesty the Queen was visiting Leicester that day, I'm not sure, but the help is always welcome. And our man here had many an interesting tale to tell to Wendy, Alan and me, which made for an amusing passage. Those water levels don't seem to be any higher though. Now I know from experience that all the water birds do get out of the way of boats in the end, but this pair just kept swimming right in front of me for ages until finally they moved off, and even then they just went ahead a bit. They really are the most contrary animals. A bit of countryside still exists even though we're plunging deeper into town, and look, to one side you can just make out the River Soar waiting to join the canal in a mile or so. We've been going for 3 hours now. It is cold, hence the woolly hat, and we are just starting to approach what you would probably call the real heart of Leicester. I mean, we're not quite there yet, there's a few more locks to do, but just starting to come into the proper Leicester environs rather than the suburbs of Leicester. So I just got a message on the old walkie-talkie that apparently there are some volunteers on the next lock, so that'll be helpful. And that wasn't the only exciting news. Just been told also, not only are there lock keepers here doing all the hard work for us, but after this we are properly on the river, although you may not know it because it's still quite a small bit of river at the time. This is King's Lock, and look on the right, a big warning sign about how you need to pay attention to other warning signs about the river levels at times of flooding. It's all rather scary stuff. The old lock cottage is now a tea room, though we didn't stop as we had plenty more canal to cover before our evening rest. That's one of the river level warning gauges, thankfully in the green, if you can actually see it through the moss. So, this is the river then, the raging torrent of which I've been so fearful, cautious and wary. Look how its rapids swirl alongside the boat, it's a wonder I can steer straight. Truth be told, that's where the river actually joins about 100 yards further down, and it shares one sad similarity with the canal, dumped stuff like this shopping trolley. Apart from that, it's very green and pleasant. I could get used to this river business. Now these are quite nice little properties. Look at that back garden. And these new builds have a lovely aspect onto the river. Hang on, that'll be a weir. I was worried about those too, but that doesn't look too bad. You know what, it's turning into quite a nice afternoon weather-wise. There are just a couple more locks to go until we get to the Miles Strait, which runs straight, as the name suggests, through the middle of Leicester, and then just after that, hopefully there'll be some space at these nice semi-secure CRT moorings at Friar's Mill, I think it's called, or Friary Mill, something like that. Another weir, bit bigger, no chance of floating down it with that bridge there though, which is handy. One more lock to go before we're on the Miles Strait, and it is next to a properly massive weir. Peek through the bridge, look to the right, and you see those orange buoys? Those mark just the end of this weir that, if the weather was bad and the river levels were up, would genuinely be quite scary. Luckily, as we've had no rain and the river could hardly be calmer, it was a good introduction for me. But where the water falls off, like those infinity pools you get in posh hotels, I can't imagine the horror if your boat drifted powerless that way. Thank goodness for my new anchor. Next to the weir, Leicester City Football Club, who the previous night had played and lost at the Champions League in Madrid. They'd ultimately go down 2-1, unfortunately. Waiting for the lock, though, these chains and rings are most annoying, seemingly designed to scratch all the paint off your boat, even with fenders down. We're past the weir and through the lock now, so it's full tilt down the Miles Strait into the middle of the city. It's quite impressive powering up through the middle of Leicester on a boat, and the river is certainly more substantial than when it joined the canal a few miles back. This is fun. Swan. Shops. I think that's De Montfort University, but I may be wrong. Just in case there weren't enough swans in this vlog, I present more swans. Now on the right you can just make out some moorings, not the ones we'd planned to go for, which are further round the next corner, but these at Castle Gardens look okay, and they are secured from public access, so should be safe overnight. Plus, there's 2 spaces left. That'll do nicely. So here I am, moored up for the night, and the middle boat's left, so we're all on our Todd. Good night. Good morning. Well, a perfectly pleasant night in Leicester. No disturbances apart from the usual city noises, police sirens and all that. And it started out a little bit overcast and drizzly this morning, but the skies are definitely brightening up, so we're about to crack on. Here I am untied completely, and look how the terrifying river current is ripping me from the mooring and sweeping the boat downstream. Bye-bye, swans. I'll let Alan and Wendy lead the way again. They've done this route many times. Over on the right, those are the Friars Mill moorings we were going to stop at originally. Space for a handful of boats and secure access too. Another substantial weir to the left, but I really couldn't feel any pull from it due to the low river level. It might have been a different story if there'd been any rain. The right side of this bridge was marked off, and as I went by I peered into the water. There was loads of junk, some sort of metal obstruction, nothing you'd want to hit with your boat. Blimey, another weir. This is Frog Island, I don't know why, and although I hate graffiti, I have to admit there's a couple of bits here that are actually artistic. And a load that isn't. This is quite good though. And this one. Notice this cyclist on the towpath. Turns out he's a new viewer to the vlog who'd only been watching for 3 weeks, but he recognised me and said hello, which was lovely. Through the lock, and I've always quite fancied a Ford Capri, maybe not this one though. Some boat traffic coming the other way hints at the downstream locks maybe being set in our favour, and it's Easter weekend, so there's a bit more activity than usual as well. I love these buildings alongside the canal, but I'm always curious about the more crumbling ones. This was once the home of someone's dreams and ambitions for their business, I presume. What happened? Who were they? Where did they go? Infuriatingly, there was even more junk floating in the river at this point. I tried scooping some of it up, but it was a hopeless task. That's the Wolsey Tower. It's a hosiery firm that began in 1755. They've now relocated and the site's being redeveloped as housing, though the tower will remain, I think. Oh, and that's the National Space Centre, as in outer space, though why it's in Leicester I have no idea. Another lock, which the river current bypasses to the left. I love these floodgates, though they do seem rather redundant given that all the water flows over this. Behind me now then, Swan's Nest Weir, and it's quite a long stretch now to Braunston Lock, where we're going to stop and take sustenance. A slightly better view of the Space Centre as I go. Meanwhile, on the towpath, Max and Monty are loving the long walks. They need to be walked for miles every day. I couldn't cope. We're still in the Leicester suburbs, but it does get quite green and pretty in parts. I was convinced this heron was a fake, and then he moved. If you're eagle-eyed, you'll also spot another on the wall of this bridge and weir, halfway up the slopey bit. That's him there. More countryside loveliness, and notice how wide the river has become, at least compared to a canal. This is some sort of rowing club on the left, I think. We are very nearly at Braunston, where we'll stop for the night. On the right, behind the bushes, is a very large countryside water park and nature reserve with loads of reservoirs and walks. plus some mooring just ahead of a lock. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching.